10 New Airport Rules Catching Americans Off Guard in 2026. If you're flying in 2026, there are new airport rules that could seriously disrupt your trip, and most travelers have no idea they exist. From updated ID requirements to digital IDs, facial recognition, and even a brand new TSA fee, the way airport security works has quietly changed. And if you show up unprepared, you could face long delays, surprise costs, or even be stopped at the checkpoint. The problem is that none of these changes were clearly explained. Many people still assume airport rules work the same way they did a few years ago. But in 2026, that assumption is exactly what's getting travelers caught off guard at TSA. Showing up with the wrong type of ID, relying only on your phone, or misunderstanding how digital and biometric systems work can quickly turn a smooth travel day into a stressful mess. That's why in today's video, I'm breaking down the new airport rules you need to know in 2026, in plain English. You'll learn which IDs actually work, how to avoid costly TSA mistakes, and the simple travel hacks frequent flyers use to move through security without issues. Watch until the end, because one small detail most people ignore could save you time, money, and a lot of frustration on your next flight. Rule number 1. Real ID is no longer optional. If you're flying anywhere within the United States in 2026, this is the #1 airport rule catching Americans off guard. Real ID is no longer optional if you plan to use a driver's license at TSA. For years, travelers could get away with using a standard driver's license, even an expired one in some cases, to pass through airport security. That era is officially over. In 2026, TSA now requires that your driver's license meet federal Real ID security standards, and it must be current and valid. No exceptions. So, what exactly is Real ID? Real ID is a federally approved form of identification designed to meet higher security requirements at TSA checkpoints. The easiest way to know if your license qualifies is to look at the top corner of your card. If you see a star, gold, black, or inside a circle depending on your state, your license is Real ID compliant. If there's no star, TSA will not accept it for domestic flights. Here's where many travelers get confused. Real ID rules apply only to driver's licenses and state-issued IDs. They do not apply to passports. If you have a valid U.S. passport or passport card, you already meet TSA's ID requirements for every domestic flight. That's why frequent travelers often rely on their passport, even for short trips. It works everywhere, every time. Another major change in 2026 is that expired IDs no longer slide through security like they used to. In the past, TSA allowed some flexibility with recently expired licenses. That flexibility is gone. If your Real ID compliant license is expired, TSA treats it the same as having no acceptable ID at all. And that's where problems begin. Showing up with a non-compliant or expired license can lead to delays, additional screening, or even unexpected fees. In worst-case scenarios, it can put your entire trip at risk. The smart move is simple. Before you leave for the airport, confirm your ID is Real ID compliant and not expired, or bring your passport instead. Real ID is no longer a suggestion. In 2026, it's the baseline requirement for driver's license users at TSA, and ignoring it is one of the fastest ways to start your trip the wrong way. Rule number 2. Passports are the safest airport ID. If there's one form of identification that consistently works at airports in 2026, it's your passport. While many travelers still think of passports as something you only need for international trips, the reality is that a valid passport is now the safest and most reliable airport ID you can carry, even for domestic flights. Here's why. Passports already meet the highest federal security standards, which means they automatically satisfy TSA's identity requirements. Unlike driver's licenses, passports are not affected by Real ID rules. They don't need a special star. They don't depend on state-level compliance, and they don't create confusion at security checkpoints. If you hand TSA a valid passport, you're covered. This is why experienced and frequent travelers often default to using their passport at TSA, even when flying within the United States. It eliminates uncertainty. There's no second-guessing whether your license is compliant, current, or accepted in that specific lane. A passport works in every airport, in every TSA checkpoint, without exception. Another advantage is reliability. Driver's licenses can be denied if they're expired, damaged, or not Real ID compliant. Digital IDs may work only in certain airports and only in certain lanes. But a physical passport doesn't rely on technology, batteries, apps, or airport-specific equipment. When systems fail or rules get confusing, TSA always falls back on physical, federally issued IDs, and the passport is at the top of that list. It's also important to understand that your passport covers both domestic and international travel. That means carrying one ID can handle every step of your trip, from TSA security to international border control. For travelers who take multiple trips a year, this simplicity is a major advantage. That said, passports aren't completely risk-free. Losing one can be more inconvenient than losing a driver's license, and replacement takes time. That's why smart travelers protect their passport carefully and avoid unnecessary handling. But from a security and acceptance standpoint, nothing beats it. The bottom line is simple. If you want the least stressful experience at the airport in 2026, carry your passport. It bypasses Real ID confusion, works everywhere, and gives you the highest level of certainty at TSA. Rule number 3. Digital IDs are optional, not replacements. Digital IDs are one of the most misunderstood airport changes in 2026. Many travelers now assume that storing their ID on their phone means they no longer need to carry a physical one. That assumption is where problems begin. Digital IDs are designed to be a convenience, not a replacement. And TSA is very clear about that. In simple terms, a digital ID is an electronic version of your driver's license stored in an approved app, such as Apple Wallet, Google Wallet, or a state-issued mobile ID app. At some airports and in some TSA lanes, travelers can scan their phone instead of handing over a physical card. When it works, it can feel fast and seamless. But that convenience comes with limitations most people don't realize. First, digital IDs are not accepted everywhere. Not all airports support them. Even in airports that do, only certain TSA lanes have the required equipment. You could arrive expecting to use your digital ID only to be directed to a lane that doesn't accept it. In that situation, TSA will ask for a physical ID. And if you don't have one, you're treated as arriving without acceptable identification. Second, digital IDs depend entirely on technology. A dead phone battery, a frozen app, a system outage, or a failed scan can instantly turn a quick shortcut into a serious delay. TSA officers are allowed to request a physical backup at any time, even if digital ID is supported in that lane. When they do, you must be able to produce one. This is where many travelers get caught off guard. If TSA cannot verify your identity through their standard process and you have no physical ID to fall back on, you may be sent into additional screening or charged the TSA identity verification fee. That fee is not a penalty for using digital ID. It's a consequence of having no acceptable backup. The smart way to think about digital ID is this. It's a shortcut, not a safety net. Use it to speed things up when available, but never rely on it as your only form of identification. In 2026, the rule is simple. Digital IDs can make travel easier, but your physical ID is still the foundation of airport security. Always carry one, even if you plan to use your phone. Rule number 4. Digital passports don't replace physical ones. One of the biggest sources of confusion in 2026 comes from the phrase digital passport. It sounds futuristic, convenient, and official, which leads many travelers to believe they can now fly internationally without carrying a physical passport. That is not true. Digital passports do not replace physical passports, and relying on that assumption can derail your entire trip. When news outlets or airlines talk about digital passports, they're usually referring to systems that store your passport information electronically to speed up parts of the airport experience. These programs may allow you to verify your identity during check-in, pass through TSA faster, or use facial recognition at boarding gates. In some cases, your face becomes your boarding pass, but none of this changes what is legally required to cross an international border. Every country still requires a physical passport booklet for entry and exit. That booklet is the legal travel document used to admit you into a country, deny entry, or record your arrival and departure. No app, QR code, or stored passport data can replace that requirement, at least not yet. This distinction matters because travelers often confuse convenience with authorization. Digital passport programs are designed to make the airport process smoother, not to change international travel law. They can reduce wait times and minimize document handling, but they do not eliminate the need to physically present your passport to immigration officials. There's also the issue of system limitations. Digital passport programs are not universally supported. One airport, airline, or country may participate, while another does not. Even when the system works at departure, you'll still need your physical passport when you arrive at your destination. If you show up at immigration without it, there is no digital workaround. The safest assumption to make in 2026 is this: if you're flying internationally, your physical passport is non-negotiable. Digital tools are optional enhancements, not replacements. They exist to speed things up, not to take the place of the document that grants you legal permission to travel. So think of digital passports as helpers, not substitutes. In every international travel scenario, your physical passport is still the final authority, and forgetting it is one mistake technology can't fix. Rule number 5. The new TS, a $45 identity verification fee. One of the most surprising airport changes in 2026 is the introduction of the $45 TSA identity verification fee, and it's catching travelers completely off guard. This fee applies when a passenger arrives at the security checkpoint without any acceptable form of identification, and TSA has no standard way to confirm who they are. Here's how it works. If you show up to TSA without a real ID-compliant driver's license, a passport or passport card, a global entry card, a military ID, or another TSA-approved physical ID, and you also don't have a usable digital ID that TSA can accept in that lane, you may be pulled out of the regular security line. At that point, TSA can initiate a process known as Confirm ID. Confirm ID is a manual identity verification process where TSA checks your personal information against government databases to establish your identity. This process takes extra time and additional screening, and it now comes with a non-refundable $45 fee. That fee covers identity verification for up to 10 days, which means it may apply to both legs of a round-trip flight depending on how long you're traveling. What catches many travelers by surprise is that this fee isn't limited to people who forgot their wallet at home. It can also apply to travelers who intended to use a digital ID but arrive at an airport or TSA lane that doesn't support it, or whose phone battery dies, app malfunctions, or system goes down. In those cases, TSA treats the situation the same as arriving with no acceptable ID. It's important to understand that paying the $45 fee does not guarantee a smooth experience. While many travelers will still be allowed to fly after Confirm ID, delays are common, and if you're short on time, you could miss your flight. TSA is clear that this process is meant to be a backup for emergencies, not a routine alternative to carrying proper identification. The takeaway is simple. The easiest way to avoid the TSA $45 fee is to always carry a valid physical ID. Digital tools can help, but they should never be your only option. In 2026, preparation is cheaper, faster, and far less stressful than relying on Confirm ID. Rule number 6. Showing up without backup ID is riskier than ever. In 2026, one of the biggest mistakes travelers make is assuming that one form of ID is enough. With the rise of digital IDs, mobile wallets, and biometric systems, many people believe backups are no longer necessary. In reality, the opposite is true. Showing up at the airport without a backup ID is riskier than ever. Technology has made travel faster, but it has also introduced new points of failure. Phones die. Apps freeze. Systems go offline. TSA lanes that support digital ID may be closed, redirected, or unavailable due to staffing or equipment issues. When that happens, TSA immediately falls back on the traditional process, a physical, federally accepted ID. If you can't produce one, the situation escalates quickly. You may be removed from the standard line, subjected to additional screening, or pushed into the Confirm ID process, which can cost time, money, and peace of mind. Even travelers who successfully used digital ID on their last trip can run into trouble on their next one if conditions change. Another issue is discretion. TSA officers are allowed to request a physical ID at any point, even if digital ID is accepted at that checkpoint. This isn't a punishment or a malfunction. It's part of the layered security system TSA uses in 2026. If you don't have a backup, there is no override button. Many travelers also assume that carrying one physical ID is sufficient. But experienced flyers know that redundancy matters. A damaged license, an expired card, or a wallet lost during transit can leave you stranded at security with no immediate solution. This is especially risky on return flights, where replacing an ID on short notice may not be possible. The smartest travelers plan for failure before it happens. That means carrying a primary physical ID, like a passport or Real ID compliant license, and keeping it protected. Some also travel with a secondary form of ID stored separately, such as a passport card or trusted traveler card. The rule in 2026 is simple. Convenience should never replace preparation. Digital tools are helpful, but physical backup IDs are what keep trips from falling apart. When everything works, you move faster. When something fails, a backup ID is what keeps you flying. Rule number 7. Facial recognition is increasing but optional. Facial recognition is becoming more common at airports in 2026, and for many travelers it feels unsettling. Some worry they're being tracked, monitored, or forced into a system they don't understand. The reality is more straightforward. Facial recognition is expanding, but for U.S. citizens, it is generally optional. Facial recognition is a form of biometric identity verification. At the airport, it's used to compare a live image of your face to a photo already on file, such as your passport photo, driver's license photo, or airline passenger record. Its purpose is simple: to confirm that you are the same person associated with your travel documents. It's designed to speed up processes like TSA screening, bag drop, or boarding. What facial recognition is not doing is just as important. It is not reading your emotions. It is not scanning your social media profiles. It is not tracking your movements throughout the airport. And it is not building a long-term surveillance profile of your face. In most cases, the image is used momentarily for identity matching and then discarded according to government and airline policies. Another point of confusion is whether facial recognition is mandatory. At TSA security checkpoints, U.S. citizens generally have the right to opt out of biometric screening. If you prefer not to use facial recognition, you can request a manual ID check instead. TSA officers are trained to accommodate these requests, and opting out should not result in penalties or delays beyond standard processing time. Airlines also use facial recognition, particularly for boarding and baggage drop. In these cases, the same principle usually applies. Participation is optional, and you can ask to present your documents the traditional way. The technology is meant to offer convenience, not remove choice. The key takeaway is this: facial recognition is an option, not a requirement. If you're comfortable using it, it can make parts of your airport experience faster. If you're not, you still have the right to use physical ID and manual verification. In 2026, understanding your options matters. Facial recognition is here to stay, but how you use it, or whether you use it at all, remains your decision. Rule number 8. Airport security is now a layered system. One of the biggest reasons travelers feel confused at airports in 2026 is because airport security no longer relies on a single method of identification. Instead, TSA now operates using a layered security system where multiple tools work together and fall back on one another to verify who you are. At its core, TSA's job hasn't changed. Security officers still need to confirm your identity and ensure you're authorized to fly. What has changed is how they do it. Today's checkpoints may involve physical IDs, digital IDs, facial recognition, and back-end database checks, sometimes all in the same airport. Think of these layers as options, not replacements. Your physical ID, like a passport or Real ID compliant driver's license, remains the foundation. This is the primary layer TSA can always rely on. Digital IDs and biometric tools are added on top of that foundation to improve speed and efficiency when available. When everything works smoothly, you might breeze through security without handing over a physical card at all. But when a system is unavailable, a lane doesn't support a feature, or a technical issue arises, TSA simply drops back to the previous layer. That's why travelers who assume something has been permanently replaced often run into trouble. For example, digital ID may work at one airport, but not another. Facial recognition may be offered at one checkpoint, but unavailable at the next. None of these tools are guaranteed. The only constant across every TSA checkpoint is the ability to verify identity using an approved physical ID. This layered approach also explains why TSA officers sometimes ask for documents even when travelers believe they shouldn't need them. It's not inconsistency, it's adaptability. Officers are trained to use the best available layer at that moment, depending on equipment, staffing, and security needs. The problem arises when travelers misunderstand this system. Many assume that because a digital or biometric option worked once, it will always work. In a layered system, that's never guaranteed. The takeaway is simple. Airport security in 2026 is flexible, not simplified. New tools exist to speed things up, but they haven't eliminated old requirements. If you bring a valid physical ID, every other layer becomes optional convenience. If you don't, even the most advanced technology won't save you. Rule number 9. Assumptions cause most airport problems. In 2026, most airport problems don't happen because travelers break the rules. They happen because travelers assume the rules have changed more than they actually have. Assumptions are now one of the biggest reasons people get delayed, flagged, or caught off guard at TSA. One common assumption is that digital systems have replaced physical ones. Travelers use a digital ID once, it works perfectly, and they assume they'll never need their physical ID again. Then they arrive at a different airport, a different TSA lane, or a different time of day, and suddenly that option isn't available. When TSA asks for a physical ID and none is produced, what felt like progress instantly becomes a problem. Another widespread assumption is that Real ID affects all forms of identification equally. Many travelers believe that if Real ID rules changed, their passport must be affected too. In reality, passports were never part of the Real ID program. That misunderstanding causes unnecessary stress, last-minute replacements, or travelers carrying the wrong documents. Facial recognition creates its own set of assumptions. Some people believe it's mandatory and feel uncomfortable or pressured. Others assume it's just a faster version of TSA, and that it eliminates the need for ID entirely. Both beliefs are incorrect. Facial recognition is an optional tool designed to speed up identity verification, not replace it. There's also the assumption that what worked last time will work again. Airport systems are dynamic. Equipment changes, lanes close, policies evolve, and staff discretion plays a role. Relying on a previous experience instead of current requirements is one of the fastest ways to run into trouble. The truth is that TSA has not removed core requirements. It has added options. Problems arise when travelers confuse optional conveniences with permanent replacements. The safest mindset in 2026 is to assume nothing has been eliminated. Physical IDs still matter. Backup plans are still necessary. And understanding the rules matters more than trying to outsmart the system. When travelers replace assumptions with preparation, airport security becomes predictable again. In a world of evolving technology, clarity, not convenience, is what keeps trips running smoothly. Rule number 10. Preparation matters more than ever. As airport rules continue to evolve in 2026, one truth stands out above everything else. Preparation matters more than ever. With layered security systems, digital tools, biometric options, and new fees in play, travelers who prepare properly move through airports smoothly, and those who don't are the ones getting delayed or caught off guard. Preparation starts long before you leave for the airport. It means knowing which form of ID you plan to use and confirming that it's valid, compliant, and accessible. If you're using a driver's license, that means verifying it's real ID compliant and not expired. If you're using a passport, it means checking the expiration date and making sure it's packed securely. These small checks take minutes at home but can save hours of stress later. It also means treating digital tools as enhancements, not solutions. Digital IDs, mobile wallets, and facial recognition can speed things up when they work, but they should never be your only plan. A charged phone, a working app, and a supported TSA lane are never guaranteed. Smart travelers enjoy the convenience while still carrying a physical backup that works everywhere. Preparation also involves understanding your options. Knowing that facial recognition is optional gives you confidence. Knowing when the TSA identity verification fee applies helps you avoid it. Knowing that systems vary by airport keeps your expectations realistic. Information reduces anxiety, and informed travelers make better decisions under pressure. Another overlooked part of preparation is organization. Keeping your ID protected, easily accessible, and separate from distractions reduces fumbling at checkpoints. Travelers who appear prepared tend to move faster because TSA interactions are smoother and more predictable. The final piece of preparation is mindset. Airports in 2026 reward travelers who plan ahead and penalize those who rely on assumptions or shortcuts. The rules aren't designed to trick you. They're designed to work within a system that prioritizes security first and convenience second. The takeaway is simple. Bring the right ID, carry a backup, understand your options, and expect variability. Preparation doesn't just save time, it protects your entire trip. When you put all of this together, the message is clear. Flying in 2026 isn't harder, but it is different. Airports haven't taken away your ability to travel. They've added new layers, new tools, and new options. The problems happen when travelers assume something has been replaced, when in reality, it's only been expanded. If you bring the right physical ID, most of these changes won't affect you at all. Digital IDs, facial recognition, and biometric programs are meant to make things faster when they work, not to serve as your only plan. Preparation turns all of this from confusion into convenience. The safest approach is simple. Know which ID you're using. Make sure it's valid. Carry a physical backup. Treat technology as a bonus, not a guarantee. And understand that flexibility is now part of the airport experience. If this video helped you feel more confident about flying in 2026, you'll want to stay ahead of the changes that are still coming. New airport rules, airline policies, and travel fees are rolling out constantly, and knowing them before you travel makes all the difference. Check out the next video on your screen for more travel tips and hacks, and don't forget to subscribe so you never get caught off guard at the airport again. Safe travels, and I'll see you in the next one.